If you live in the UK and still think tea is the safest thing in your kitchen, this video will probably make you want to go through your cupboards and throw a few boxes out straight away. In this video, we're going to put the marketing claims side by side with the reality of the ingredients and scandals behind 8 familiar UK tea brands that you may want to stop buying, and then finish with 2 options that are still relatively safe for your family to drink every day. A series of recent reports and tests suggest that it's actually the classic teas you know best, the ones you pick up at the supermarket every week, that are the most worrying. From tea bags that can shed microplastics to detox and immune support and organic labels that sound healthy but are barely backed up by evidence. Worse, some of these products may be bringing substances into your body that really shouldn't be there at all. And we're starting with a traditional tea that almost every household in the UK has sitting on the kitchen shelf. 8. Twinings Everyday. Twinings is supposed to be the safe choice. It is the box that sits on the shelf like a little museum piece, the logo that proudly says 1706. For a lot of people, especially in the middle of a cost of living crisis, Twinings Everyday is that one small luxury you keep when everything else has been cut. You skip the takeaway, you cut back on streaming, but you still tell yourself, at least I've got a decent box of tea in the cupboard. On the surface, you are paying for heritage, for that old school idea of proper English quality. But when you look a bit closer, the romance falls apart. Most people have no idea that many traditional everyday bags still rely on a strip of plastic or a plastic-based glue to seal the edges. At the same time, we've had headlines for years about microplastics leaching from plastic tea bags into hot water, and Twinings has not exactly been leading the charge to get rid of them. Then you see independent blind tastings, where cheap supermarket own-brand tea quietly beats the fancy box on flavor, and suddenly the story changes. You thought you were buying the real British standard. The data says you might just be buying the branding. What makes this worse is the price. You can easily pay 3 or 4 times more for Twinings than for a supermarket's own label, not because the leaves are transparently sourced or dramatically higher quality, but because the logo has survived a few centuries. Add to that the fact that the parent company does not shine in every ethical ranking, and this polished, classic, and respectable image starts to look less like tradition and more like a marketing costume no one bothered to update. For ordinary families, that hurts. When money is tight, a box of Twinings can feel like a tiny act of dignity, a way of saying we're struggling, but we're not completely giving up. Realizing that your premium cuppa is not really better, not really cleaner, and may come with an extra serving of plastic is infuriating. It feels like you're being charged extra for the privilege of trusting the label. When I see Twinings on the shelf now, I don't see heritage. I see a reminder that even the most respectable packaging can quietly put profit before your cup. And at least, to be fair, Twinings never promised their tea would heal your heart or cleanse your liver. The next brand on this list did exactly that until the UK's ad watchdog had to step in. 7. Tetley. For years, the adverts nudged you towards this idea that Tetley wasn't just tea, it was a good habit for your heart. Rich in antioxidants, helping you live a bit healthier, a bit longer. So you do what a responsible adult is told to do. You cut back on chocolate, you feel guilty about wine, and you keep Tetley in the trolley because at least that feels like a smart choice. Then you dig into what actually happened. The UK's ad watchdog had to step in and shut down campaigns where Tetley claimed its tea was rich in antioxidants that can help keep your heart healthy, and pushed the slogan, "Go on, live a lot." Regulators basically said, yes, there are studies on tea in general, but no, you cannot tell people that drinking Tetley specifically will keep their heart healthy or extend their life. In other words, the heart-healthy image was never as solid as the marketing made it sound. And while all of that was happening on the surface, another quiet problem sat in the cup. Those standard Tetley bags that still rely on plastic in the seal. So that daily good-for-your-heart brew may also be delivering a sprinkle of microplastics your body never asked for. No warning label, no honest conversation, just a cozy cartoon image and a health halo that had to be clipped back by the ASA. What makes this worse is how precisely it plays on people's fears. In a country where the NHS keeps warning about heart disease, cholesterol, and blood pressure, it's hard not to feel angry when a cheap everyday tea leans on that anxiety to sell itself. If even something as basic as a Tetley bag is willing to flirt with heart health claims it can't back up, you start to wonder what exactly the rules are worth and who they really protect, you, or the brands that can afford the lawyers. So now every time you pour a cup, the question in your head is no longer milk first or last. It's what else is in here that I was never told about. That's the point where a lot of people stop trusting the word healthy on any packet at all and start looking for simpler, more transparent options. And if Tetley is the classic health halo trick, the next brand on this list takes it up a level, slapping on premium packaging, a bigger price tag, and an eco-friendly story, while the bag itself is still plastic. 6. Teapigs Tea. Temples. Teapigs is the kind of tea you buy when you're trying to be better. You pay a few extra pounds and tell yourself you're not just buying tea, you're upgrading your health and doing your bit for the environment, finally stepping away from the cheap plastic-sealed bags your parents used. But then you learn what PLA actually is. That made from corn line sounds wholesome until you realize PLA is still a plastic polymer, and it only really breaks down in industrial composting conditions that your kitchen caddy and local council bin simply don't provide. It does not magically disappear in your mug. At the same time, studies on plastic tea bags have shown they can shed billions of micro and nanoplastic particles into hot water. So that elegant tea temple, the one you bought to escape plastic, may be quietly adding more of it to your drink, just with nicer branding. What makes this worse is the price tag and the story wrapped around it. A box of Teapigs can cost as much as or more than genuinely high-quality loose-leaf tea from small suppliers. Yet the ethics scoreboards keep linking the brand back into the same kind of corporate ecosystem that gets criticized for its environmental impact, tax behavior, and supply chains. You think you've escaped big tea, but your money is still feeding the same machine. Only now it's wearing a hipster costume and talking about mindfulness. For a lot of younger shoppers in the UK, that hits a nerve. People are already dealing with climate anxiety, already sorting their recycling, already paying more for anything labeled eco. When you then find out your Eco Tea Temple is, in practice, still a plastic bag with better PR, you don't just feel disappointed, you feel played. You start to wonder how many regulators, retailers, and brands signed off on this language, knowing full well most households will never have access to the kind of composting these labels quietly assume. When I see Teapigs on the shelf now, I don't see a small act of sustainability. I see a reminder that even our attempts to do the right thing can be turned into a premium product line. And that is just the story about plastic in a hot cup of tea. Once tea moves into chilled bottles and sugar joins the party, things get a lot worse very quickly. 5. Lipton Iced Tea Peach. Lipton Iced Tea Peach is sold as the better option. You see that yellow label and the big peach in almost every chilled cabinet in the country, right next to the colas. It looks like tea, it sounds lighter, and for a lot of parents it quietly becomes the compromise drink. At least it's not fizzy pop. But the back of the bottle tells a very different story. Per 500 milliliter bottle, the sugar can swallow up a huge chunk of the 30 grams of free sugar an adult is meant to have in a whole day, according to NHS guidance. And that guideline is lower again for children. Strip away the marketing and what you are really holding is a sugar-sweetened soft drink with a bit of tea flavoring. It sits in the same health category as the very drinks it pretends to rise above. Yet the front of the pack keeps nudging your brain towards light, refreshing, better choice. Then you remember the Rest in Peach campaign where Lipton played games with people's emotions, making fans think the flavor was being killed off just so they could drive clicks and engagement. On top of that, the proud 100% recycled bottle claim quietly applies to the plastic body only, not the cap, not the label. Layer by layer, the gap between the promise and the reality gets wider. What makes this worse is who they aim it at and how every part of the system helps it along. This is the bottle stuffed into $3 meal deals, lined up at eye level in school break spots, sold in multiplex fridges where water is hidden on the bottom shelf. Parents pick it up because the word tea feels safer than cola. In practice, one bottle at lunch can shove a child dangerously close to their entire daily sugar allowance in one hit. And somehow that is still allowed to sit under friendly yellow branding while regulators focus on whether a slogan technically breaks an advertising code. Supermarkets know exactly where they place it. Petrol stations and corner shops know exactly which shelf makes it irresistible. Everyone along the chain gets paid. You get the bill and your blood sugar. For families trying to cut back, the drinks aisle becomes a booby-trapped corridor. You cannot trust the front of anything. You find yourself reading labels like legal documents, second-guessing every refreshing claim, realizing that no one in power is going to fix this for you. At some point, you have to decide, either accept that you are buying liquid sugar in a tea costume, or step away and look for simpler, safer options. And at least with Lipton, you can see the sugar numbers in black and white. The next brand is sneakier. It sells itself as herbal, wellness, organic, premium, right up until people start finding insects in the bag. 4. Kintra Foods Organic Premium. Kintra Foods Organic Premium. Leaf tea is the kind of thing you spot on a random shelf in TK Maxx or HomeSense and feel oddly proud for finding. The label says organic premium leaf tea, the tin looks imported and clean, and it feels like you've outsmarted the big brands by picking something niche, natural, and supposedly safer. You don't just buy tea, you buy the story that this is a step above the industrial stuff everyone else drinks. Then one day you see the same name in a Food Standards Agency recall notice, and the story collapses. Certain batches of Kintra organic leaf tea are being pulled because insects have been found inside sealed packs. Not vague quality issues and not a minor labeling error, actual insects in a product that sold itself as clean, premium, and organic. Even if it isn't a deadly pathogen outbreak. The message is brutal. You paid extra, you hunted for something better, and what you got was a basic hygiene failure that should never have left the factory. In a country that loves to talk about world-class standards, it makes you wonder what exactly those standards are doing while this stuff sits on the shelves. What makes this worse is the kind of shopper Kintra attracts. These are people who walk past the big, shiny logos on purpose. They read about pesticides, about industrial farming, about supply chains that treat both land and workers as disposable, and they decide to do better. They dig through chaotic discount aisles to find that one tin that says organic and premium, because they believe that means someone somewhere cared more. When that exact product ends up on an FSA recall list for something as visible and basic as insects in the packet, it feels like being punished for trying. After that, the fatigue sets in. You realize you're not just suspicious of the obvious villains anymore, now you have to side-eye the little indie-looking imports too. Every time you see the word organic, you hear a quiet voice in your head asking, organic by whose standards? And who's actually checking? You start to accept a hard truth. No label, no retailer, no regulator is going to do all the thinking for you. If you want something genuinely safer, you have to ask where it was packed, how it was stored, and whether anyone independent has looked at it. Insects in tea are disgusting, but at least you can see them. With the next brand on this list, the worry is worse because what people are afraid of lives deep in the leaves as invisible pesticide residues in a tea that dares to call itself immune support. 3. Yogi Tea, Yogi Echinacea. Immune support is designed to look like the perfect little wellness ritual. The box has soft colors, a person meditating, gentle fonts, and that name that sounds like exactly what you need in flu season. Immune support. You're not buying just tea, you're buying the idea that one warm mug before bed might help your body fight off whatever is going around the office, the school, the train carriage. Then you find out that some batches of this exact tea have been recalled in other markets because pesticide residues were above legal limits and the illusion snaps. This is a product that leans heavily on words like organic, natural, immune, and yet it still managed to cross the line on something as basic as how much pesticide is allowed on the leaves. The brand is sold all over Europe and in the UK, sitting on shelves that most people assume are vetted, checked, safe by default. When something with immune support written on the front ends up on a recall list for pesticide issues, it forces an ugly question. If even this can slip through, what on earth is everyone else getting away with? This isn't a treat for people who are perfectly healthy and just bored. It goes straight for those who are already worried, people with weak immune systems, people who seem to catch every cold, parents trying desperately to stop yet another bug from tearing through the house. They are not chasing a fun flavor. They are buying the feeling of protection. When a product aimed at that fear quietly carries a risk of higher pesticide residues, it stops being a quirky marketing problem and starts looking like an ethical failure. You're selling reassurance in a box that might be part of the very problem people are trying to avoid. After that, it becomes almost impossible to look at any immune claim the same way. You walk down a supermarket aisle and suddenly the vitamin drinks, yogurts, cereals, and teas all blur into one wall of support, defense, boost. Instead of comfort, those words start to feel like red flags. Most of us don't have the time or training to read every scientific paper or EFSA ruling, so distrust becomes the only defense left. If the regulators allow this language to creep onto packaging while recalls happen quietly in the background, you realize you have to build your own rules. Favor simple ingredient lists, avoid miracle claims, and remember that a calm design and a yoga pose on the box do not equal safety. And if this immune tea already makes you uncomfortable, the next brand on this list goes even further, targeting an even more fragile worry. Mothers who are terrified they might not have enough milk for their babies. 2. Nipper & Co. Mum's Milk. Nipper & Co.'s Mum's Milk Tea looks harmless at first glance. Soft pastel colors, a cute illustration, a name that whispers more milk. Happier baby. You don't pick it up because you're thirsty. You pick it up because you're scared. In the middle of 3 a.m., feeds, cracked nipples, and endless conflicting advice, a box that promises to support lactation, balance hormones, and keep your flow steady starts to feel less like a product and more like a lifeline. But under UK advertising rules, anything that hints at boosting milk supply, affecting hormones, or supporting a specific body function is treated as a serious health claim. The herbs inside, fenugreek, fennel, aniseed, and the usual suspects, have a long history in folk medicine, but the scientific evidence on how well they work, at what dose, and how safe they are in the long term is still patchy. The brand dances on a tightrope. On paper, it is just a herbal tea, but in the way the name, copy, and social media posts are put together, it quietly suggests it can nudge your hormones and fix your milk. That gray area might be clever marketing, but it is exactly the kind of thing that makes health professionals and consumer groups frown. Postpartum mothers are some of the most vulnerable shoppers in the entire supermarket. They are sleep-deprived, anxious, and already blaming themselves for everything that isn't going perfectly. The fear of not having enough milk cuts straight to the heart of their identity as a parent. So when a pretty box in the wellness section offers gentle support in a cup and carefully stops, just short of promising results, it feels almost cruel. It uses the language of supplements without the clear warnings or honest discussion of limits. The supermarket shelves it next to baby snacks and pregnancy vitamins, and everyone along the chain pretends this is just a nice little tea. And when nothing changes, instead of questioning the product, many women turn the knife on themselves. If this tea helps and I still can't produce more, maybe my body is broken. Instead of being pointed towards proper breastfeeding support, medical advice, nutrition, and mental health care, they are nudged deeper into a spiral of buying more teas, more powders, more pills. Trust doesn't just erode in the brand, it erodes in the whole system that allowed this kind of half-promise to be sold as comfort. You start to realize that in this market, your insecurity is a business model. And all of this still isn't the biggest twist in the tea world. The product at number 1 was called out so clearly that even the word detox on the box was no longer allowed to survive. 1. Pukka Detox. Pukka is sold as yoga in a tea bag. The boxes are covered in botanical patterns. The words organic and fair trade are everywhere, and the names sound like little mantras. Detox, cleanse, feel new. For years, Pukka Detox was the go-to box for anyone trying to clean up after Christmas, a heavy weekend, or a few too many takeaway nights. The feeling being sold was simple. Make a cup, and your body gets reset. Then the UK's ad watchdog stepped in and said out loud what a lot of doctors had been muttering for years. Regulators concluded that the word detox on a tea implied a real health benefit, actually removing toxins from your body, and that Pukka didn't have the kind of approved evidence you need to make that kind of promise. The result? The product had to be rebranded. Same herbs in the bag, same cozy ritual in the mug, but the name quietly changed to Feel New. The core of the promise, that one loaded word detox, was not allowed to survive. When a single word on a tea box is judged too misleading to live, you realize just how far the marketing had drifted from reality. What makes this worse is that Pukka isn't some random bargain bin brand. It's the poster child of the whole wellness aesthetic, sold in curated health shops, pushed in supermarket better-for-you sections, stacked next to yoga books and mindfulness journals. When even this flagship of the clean, green lifestyle can't legally keep the word detox on the front, it sends a brutal message. A huge slice of the wellness industry has been selling the same dream, built more on feelings and hope than on science. Instead of a genuine detox, what most people were really buying was a warm drink and the comforting illusion that they had undone their choices from the weekend. For ordinary shoppers, the Pukka case is a wake-up call. Suddenly, every detox water in the Tesco fridge, every cleansed cereal, every reset snack bar starts to look suspicious. It stops being a one-off scandal and starts to feel like proof that the word detox has been allowed to run wild for far too long while supermarkets happily took their cut. It's like taking off tinted glasses. Everything that once looked healthy now carries a question mark. If regulators only step in after years of sales, if retailers don't push back, then the only real protection left is you. That means choosing simple blends, ignoring miracle names, and asking every single time, exactly what is this claiming to do, and who says so? After 8 different gotchas, from heart-healthy and immune support to milk-boosting teas and a detox so misleading the word itself had to be banned, the only reasonable question left is, what on that tea shelf, if anything, can we still trust? Simple, plastic-free tea with zero hype. After everything we've just gone through, the safest thing on the tea shelf is probably the one you never notice. No yoga poses, no detox, no immune support, no glow filter on the box. Just a basic black or green tea sold as loose leaf or in plain paper, plant-based bags, with an ingredients list so short it's almost funny. Black tea. That's it. Think of things like Sainsbury's Taste the Difference, Fair Trade English Breakfast, loose leaf, or Tesco Finest Gold. Loose leaf tea. Simple blends of Assam and Kenyan tea. Fair trade, just tea. When you pick these up, they don't pretend to heal your liver or cleanse your aura. They tell you where the leaves come from, maybe that they're fair trade or organic, and then they shut up. No added sugar, no sweeteners, no natural flavorings. Smuggled in, just leaves and hot water. If you really don't want bags at all, a tin of loose leaf plus a basic metal strainer is about as low drama as it gets. If you do still want bags, something like Clipper Fair Trade Organic English Breakfast in unbleached, plant-based, plastic-free bags is at least moving away from the old petroleum plastic style, even if it's still smart to treat any bag as a short-term convenience, not a miracle object. In a cost-of-living crisis, that kind of boredom starts to look almost radical. You're not paying extra for a buzzword, you're paying for leaves that do what they've always done. Make a straight cup of tea. No tea temples, no cutesy shapes, no lifestyle claims. Less marketing usually means more money left in your pocket and fewer question marks in your head. Instead of turning your body into a testing ground for every new health claim, you quietly choose products that don't claim anything beyond "this is tea." That alone removes a huge amount of mental load, and once you strip away the hype, something important happens. You can finally relax. You don't have to Google every ingredient. You don't have to wonder whether ASA or the FSA would agree with the slogan. You boil the kettle, brew your Sainsbury's loose breakfast tea or a plain Tesco Finest blend, and you know you've bought a drink, not a promise. For a lot of people, that's the real upgrade, choosing transparency over trendiness. Sometimes the safest option in the entire aisle isn't the one going viral on Instagram, it's the slightly dull-looking box that says very little because it has nothing to hide. 2. Loose leaf tea transparent brands. If you want to go one step further than the boring supermarket box, this is where something like Brew Tea, Co-English Breakfast, Loose Leaf Tea, Good and Proper Tea's Broccoli Breakfast, or a Rare Tea, Co-Loose Leaf Earl Grey starts to make sense. These are simple tins or pouches of leaf tea from brands that talk openly about where they buy from, how they source, and what they pay growers, not just about vibes on the front of the box. The first big win is physical. Loose leaf means no bag at all. No plastic mesh, no hidden polymer in the glue, no compostable if you have access to an industrial facility asterisk. It's just leaf plus a metal infuser or teapot that lasts for years. With more and more research showing that plastic and even some biodegradable bags can shed millions or billions of microplastic particles into hot tea, stepping away from bags altogether is the cleanest line you can draw for yourself. Then there's the supply chain. A decent ethical brand will tell you which region, sometimes which estate, your tea actually comes from. Brew Tea Co., for example, works with ethical tea partnership growers and uses plastic-free packaging for its loose leaf tins. Good and Proper talks openly about buying whole leaf teas seasonally from Rainforest Alliance, certified or long-term partner farms. Rare Tea Co. leans on direct trade, paying farmers the price they set rather than racing to the bottom of the commodity market. You're not just buying a flavor, you're quietly choosing a different kind of economics. On price, loose leaf can look scary up front. $9.12 for a tin feels like a lot when you're counting every pound, but you use a teaspoon or so per cup, and suddenly that tin is covering weeks of daily brews. Per mug, it often lands in the same ballpark as, or cheaper than, those glossy detox, immune support, or wellness blends that are mostly dust and promises. You're paying for actual leaf, not the word cleanse, in a fancy font. And there's a psychological shift that's hard to put a price on. When you choose a small, traceable, loose-leaf supplier, you're not just trying to avoid being poisoned, you're choosing not to reward brands that treat your anxiety as a business model. You get a clearer drink and a clearer conscience, fewer unknowns, fewer invisible plastics, more respect for the people who actually grow the tea. If you want to protect yourself, start reading tea labels the way you already read food labels. Walk away from dreamy health claims, be suspicious of anything wrapped in plastic that doesn't need to be, and give your money to the brands that talk less and show more. When you take a step back from all of this, the pattern is pretty brutal. Just because a box says healthy, natural, detox, or immune doesn't mean it's on your side. In a cost-of-living crisis, every pound you hand over to a wellness-branded tea that quietly adds more sugar, more plastic, more pesticide is a pound you're not spending on something genuinely simple and decent. So I want to hear from you. Out of the 8 brands we've just gone through, which one shocked you the most? And be honest, is there a tea on that list you're still drinking every week without really thinking about it? If there's another tea brand you're suspicious of, juice, vitamin drinks, kids' bedtime teas, chai latte mixes, drop the name in the comments so we can dig into it next time. And if you want more investigations like this, especially about food and drink in the UK, hit subscribe so we don't miss the next healthy trap together.